Yes, okay. We're just going to wait 2 minutes to sync with the live stream. Are all good? Perfect, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Virginia. I'm the Strategic Partner Manager for News Partnership in Italy for Meta. And I'm honored to open this session about Will Media. So as Meta, we are studying and we are supporting, and we would like to support new trends of news distribution on our platform. So that's why we've been looking closely at like a phenomenon of like brand and publishers such as Will with a very curious mindset. We're going to have like a keynote speech by Alessandro, the founder of Will Media, and then open up a Q&A with the editor-in-chief, Francesco Zaffarano. So I'll hand over to you, Ale.
Thank you. Let me see if I can follow the instruction I was given. I made it. Thank you, everyone. My name is Alessandro. I'm the CEO and founder of Will. We are 2 years old. We are a media company. We live on 8 platforms, and we have more than 1.8 million followers. A big chunk of those 1.8 million followers are on Instagram, where we have 1.3 million followers. Of course, we didn't invent digital media, if you think about the internet, it started as a way to share information. This is the very basic news I'm sharing with you at 5 o'clock. But yeah, it started to share information. Everyone is a media company in these days, or can potentially be a media company these very days. Why so? Because of the progressive lowering of barriers to entry into the digital world, where everybody is a potential creator. And this is, in a sense, a result, but also the positive cause to a crazy decade, or more than a decade, a platform-dominated decade. If we think about it, more than half of the world population is using social media in these very days, and all major companies are platforms. That was not the case more than 10 years ago, and that's really fascinating. That brought and led to the exponential growth of these unicorns, as we all know, the companies with more than $1 billion in valuation. They're not so rare anymore, not so unique anymore, since they are close to 1,000. I think they broke the 1,000 roof. But that's, again, it's fantastic, even though change is not a smooth process. We all know that. This crazy decade is leading to very deep changes. It's not always easy for everyone, both in the new and the traditional world, to keep up. If we think about the first big wave of digital companies, it started out with virality. I guess you all remember this question: what color is this dress? It's one of the most viral articles post ever, I guess. And it started off with early social issues again. This is where BuzzFeed, in a sense, started off. And now it's pretty much the same. It's just on steroids. It's about virality, and it's about social changes. And if you think about the change, and I'm going to use this word a lot, more than I already did so far, we always want more and more and more change, and sometimes we can't see all that it's happening because things are moving fast, and when at this level of speed, it's hard to recognize, understand what is actually going on around us. But I think that the most interesting thing that I can look at is that people, all of us users, are getting so comfortable with platforms that we are starting to hack them and use the platforms the way we want to use them. Think about Airbnb. Supposed to be the place where you go to rent a space, and actually now people are using it to fund the resistance in Ukraine, sending money to people over there. Same with Google Maps. It's supposed to be the place you go to move around a city that probably you don't know that well, and actually, again, is a way to share information in these very days and go around censorship. If you go in some Starbucks, for example, in Moscow map, you will find not the traditional review, let's say, but information about the world that is going on. And same with Tinder. It's the app where you go to potentially try and find your match. Again, there's people sharing information about what is going on. So we know platforms, and we go around, let's say, we find a way to do what we want on those platforms, not just what they were thought to be used for. In a way, that's exactly what we did as Will. We hacked the way we use a given space, and that given space for us at the beginning was Instagram. And so from a place where to forget about the world, where to spend some few nice moments or minutes, we moved to, or we were asked to be moved to meaningful interactions a few years ago. And now I think we believe that Instagram or all those platforms, social media, can be the place where you can go to learn more about the world. This is us. We are the orange line in this chart. We have been the fastest media in Italy to news outlet to get to 1 million followers on Instagram. So we're growing pretty fast. We're grasping this opportunity, and now we're the leading voice of the efforts that we believe are cross-generation for this request and demand for more change. I'll go back to this tagline in yellow in a few minutes, because we really mean it. But sometimes it's very, very, very hard to keep up with complexity and speed. It's becoming more and more difficult, also because we feel like we feel the urge to share whatever we do, every experience that we live with people in our community, being that physical or digital in real life or in our digital world, if there's any difference. And that comes with more than one need. If you think about 2020, you may picture in your mind as the COVID year. Of course, it was a tragic year for that. But if you think about it more closely, let's say it started off with the assassination of an Iranian general in Iraq. Then there was the arrest of Patrick Zaki, some scandals. Then in March, we were actually locked in our apartments with very few having also balconies. In April, I discovered what this animal was. I had no clue before that. And then in May, the Black Lives Matter movement was back in the front row of the scene because of what happened after the George Floyd assassination. So even a year that we believe in our mind, we can picture in our mind as one color, one topic, let's say, dominated. It's actually much more complicated than we can think. And so it's complexity and speed. Those two things are, in our mind, the two factors that can actually reject and expel people from the public debate. And if we try and find or think about an antidote to that, we believe that can be awareness. So we don't mean to contribute in building competencies, hard competencies. We can't do that. We're not the place to do it. But we want to support our users, our readers in creating an awareness, to be more aware about what is going on in the world, have the tools to understand it. The new generation wants to be part of the change, despite the common belief they don't care about politics. And it's not just about what we need, what they need. It's about what we stand for. Everything becomes, in a sort, a political act and gesture. Even when we work and talk with brands as users and potential customers, finding a match with the core values of the company becomes a key element in our purchase decisions. But brand trust is a very low level at global scales. On the other side, though, the expectations towards brands are very, very high. Media and politics, I'm sorry to say, a very low and decreasing level of trust. Brands are seeing their level of trust also decreasing, but the expectations are very high. People expect companies to do well for their communities, to do well for the world, and they want companies and brands to act. And that's a way they're going to decide whether to buy your product or service or not. That's more and more common in the Gen Z. It's very common in the millennials generation, and that's a strong trend. So when we take a stand, when we consume information, or when we buy products, it's not just that. It's about raising a flag and sending a message of belonging to a certain community. So how do you do that? Well, you can also do that by sharing a post on Instagram or any social media. And we believe that for a content to be shared, it has to be funny, or it has to make me look funny to my community, whether that is an online community or it's my community tonight at dinner, or it has to make me look more interesting or committed. So either it make me look funny, interesting, or committed. If a content that we think of, that we start working on, cannot meet one of those three axes, Francesco is going to kill that content and it's not going to be published. That's how we normally act. So yeah, Gen Z do care about politics. They just don't care about the kind of politics that we were used, let's say, up until these very days, and they really are keen to scrutinize any large institutions, where by institution we don't mean just governments or bodies of that kind, but anything that it's big enough to be scrutinized. Companies are on the line, media companies, of course, are on the line. Social justice, social values are the key elements on which an institution is going to be judged and considered. There's this idea of critical consumption as a new form of political participation, and we believe it's one of the strongest acts that those generations feel and do in their power, basically. So that brings society and companies to a turning point. They need to change the way they create and brand their products, their services, but also how they talk to potential users and customers. And we believe that they can do it, and they have to do it along four main changes. One is the demographic change, Gen Z and millennials being the biggest demographic group at global level. It's not just about the demographic, it's about the values that they bring, it's about the habits they have created. Technological change, think about all the regulatory issues, the ethical issues, and everything that we need to keep up with and try to understand what an NFT is or blockchain. If you know the definition, please meet me outside. I have no idea what an NFT still is, so maybe you can help. Economical change, of course. I was born in 1985. I started working in 2008. I started my own company in 2020. 2008, financial crisis, 2020, pandemic. I bring bad luck, but it's two very deep crises. I'm part of the recessional generation, as the FT called us. We are experiencing a complete different way in producing economic value. Think about the platform economy, the creator economy, and so on. And then climate change, but not actually climate change, but the sensitivity on climate change. Climate change is here. It's been here for a while now, but it's the sensitivity and how mass that it's changing. It's changing very fast, and we can help spreading this consciousness, let's say, on this very topic. But I've been using the word change a lot, especially for those four mega trends that I just mentioned. But who is driving this change? Well, let me give you a snapshot of the last 13 years of Italian politics. Those are all the governments that we had here in Italy, and the answer, of course, I'm not looking at the color of those or parties and government, but the fact is they just don't have the time to run all this change and to take the seat, the leading seat to drive this change. So who's doing it? Let's look at Google searches. For RAI, it's the Italian BBC, the national broadcaster. There's very little interest across the world here, except for one big moment during the May 1st concert. Similar for Google searches for DDL Zan, which is a parliamentary initiative, draft law on LGBT rights. I'm oversimplifying, but let's put it this way. It's very interesting that they have such a similar trend. Who's the responsible for this spike? It's this guy. His name is Fedez. He's one of the most famous. Yeah, there's it. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, of course, but for the sake of our discussion, let's say, this is 2022 though, not 2020, but 2022. This guy is Fedez, he's a singer, he's a rapper, and for those who are not familiar with this, he basically recorded himself talking to Rai and having a discussion about what he could say and what he could not say about during his performance in that big concert. And then people looked for Rai and looked for what is going on and if there's any kind of political intervention in the television. Activists are media stars in their own right. They are becoming more and more exposed on the media scene, and they don't have to be full-time activists. I don't know how many of you remember this girl. She went on TikTok. She pretended to be doing a makeup tutorial for the very first seconds, trying to go around the censorship, and then she put it down, whatever that tool is called in English. I'm sorry, I don't know the word. And she started talking about the minorities, how minorities are treated in China. She's not a full-time activist. She wanted to share a message. She just hacked the platform once again and went for it. They don't have to be perfect. It's just that they have to have personal values aligned with and consistent with the way they communicate and what they communicate on a daily basis. I don't know how many of you have seen this documentary. It's Seaspiracy. It's on Netflix. It's a very good one. It's about the sustainability of the fishery industry. It's a good one. It raises definitely the topic of the sustainability of this industry. We went, though, this is one of our authors. She's great. We went on Instagram, basically doing a video and explaining why it's a great documentary, it's a great production, yet there are some things that are not quite perfect, let's say, in terms of the data and all. It's not about using the red pen and flagging all the mistakes. It's just, it's a great topic. It's great that Netflix is giving to such a broad audience awareness on the topic, yet it's important to get things right. Comments were terrible on that content because people accused us that we were diminishing or undermining the importance of the topic, and that we were not respecting the holiness of the documentary. It's not about that. We believe that there's no such thing as an item to be put on a stand and treated as untouchable. We just want to turn the light on a topic, and we want as many people as possible to discuss about that, to know about the importance of that. We don't give the receipt, we don't give the solution in our content. But what we try to do, and this is number one value, core value for us, is that if you can't put it simply, that means you don't know it enough. When people start using acronyms or shortened words and stuff like that, it's because they, in my humble opinion, they're trying to pretend that they know something they really don't know. So for us, we hire experts and we ask them to be good communicators in simplifying things, not oversimplifying things, but put them as simple as possible so that it can be truly inclusive and include as many people as possible in the debate. So what are we? We are unbiased, we are inclusive information for change. We are a type of information that is shared with the community. We traveled across the country last summer and we met over 1,000 of young people across the whole country, asking them what is the most difficult topic for you to place at Sunday lunch with your family or relatives and friends, and just to show that there's a gap, generational gap. And the answer was fascinating, very difficult, very different from the kind of topics I used to talk with my parents at lunch on Sunday. We are inspired, not driven by the data. The data would put us in a spiral if we only look at the data and let them decide, but we analyze as many data as possible, as much data as possible, to get the best decision, but not let the data decide for us. We do have an editor-in-chief who makes the call at the end of the day. We believe that this kind of change and a new way of sharing awareness is here to stay. It's always good to close with a quote, because nothing is more powerful than idea whose time has come. This is from Victor Hugo. But let me still 2 minutes more from your time before leaving to Virginia and Francesco. I was forgetting your name because I always call you by nickname, and Zaf. I wonder why I was telling you all of this and all about these things related to brands and companies instead of news, since it's a journalism festival. But then I Googled for the word something that cannot be set apart, and this image popped up, and I think it's great. It represents our product and our business model. They do have to stay together. The third one that it's not in this picture is our value set, our set of values that we really care. So those three things stay together and influence one each other. We would not have our product if not for the business model, and vice versa. And that's a wheel that starts with our intention to be pre-competitive, so we are not in the political arena. We don't give the solution. We don't judge. We don't debunk. We don't fact-check what politicians say. We use very relatable topics, a very inclusive language, where by inclusive I mean that it's simple enough for everyone to understand and doesn't leave anyone behind, basically, so that we can meet non-traditional news readers. We are on the front foot to meet them where they are. That means on social media. That means that we don't have a website, basically. That means that we are not going to use clickbaiting titles on our posts on Instagram, because we want people to stay there to understand. That means that we're not going to polarize our contents or titles. That means less political contents, but more value-driven debate. That means that the brands can trust us in being pre-competitive. That means they can come in and say what they are doing to change the world for better. That means more pre-competitive information that will start spinning. So that's why our product and our business model stays together, and that's why it's so important to understand how users and when do become consumers of any kind are changing so deeply. So we are social media first, because we were started on social media. We are a true community. People feel they belong to our community, and I'm proud when I meet users of Will, because they do know us, and it's great. There's a strong personal relationship, basically. Users and companies together, because they can influence one each other in being more aware of their impact of the future. So that's what we really try to do, and thank you. Yeah.
Maybe. Not too telescopic. It's on Will Media. So we have the name. The next one? Yes. Yeah, just go. Oh, perfect, that one. So at least they are the names. Thanks a lot, Ale, for the presentation. So a bit of Q&A with the editor-in-chief, that is what, the person that is actually translating this amazing vision and this value into a daily kind of editorial strategy, also a daily kind of guidelines for the team. So starting from really, how do you see your job? What's your job within Will as editor-in-chief for Will?
So first of all, thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to talk to so many people. And I think I see my job not as the leading editorial executive per se of the company. I think my main task is to facilitate that that set of values, that idea of what the kind of information we want to deliver, and to help the amazing authors that work with us and the experts that are part of the team translate their knowledge so that everyone can access it in a easy and direct way as much as possible.
And how many people do you have in the team? Will is made of how many people and which type of jobs they are doing?
I'll give you the same answer I always give. I joined Will in September 2020, and we were 13 people. Now we are 35, so...
With a new office.
With a new office, fortunately, because we didn't have enough chairs. Yeah, so it's a lot of creative minds to work with and to coordinate. So that's what I do every day.
And taking the axis Alessandro was talking about, how do you translate that into an editorial strategy, like a monthly one, a weekly one, a daily one?
Yeah, that's interesting. You correctly used the three adverbs I would have used, because we're not a daily newspaper. We are not a newspaper, first of all. We're not a magazine. We don't work on a weekly basis. We're not a monthly magazine. We're not a magazine at all. But we work on these three different time frames. So our editorial strategy is based on a 3-month series of campaigns that we discuss with the editorial team every 3 months. So we decide for the next 3 months we are going to work on these 2 specific topics, because there is, for example, there is COP26 coming. We want people to get to that point and be able to understand what's going on and to navigate the news in those days. So we're going to help them building the knowledge they need to get there ready and with all the tools they need. Then we work on a weekly strategy. Every Monday we have a very long editorial meeting. We don't have a daily meeting in mainstream and traditional news outlets. But we decide, okay, every week we sit around the table. We discuss what's going on in the world. If the editorial strategy that we built before is still working well for how the world is shaping and changing in the meantime, and then we decide what are we going to work on for the coming and the following week. Then there is a daily moment, a daily meeting that we called the check, which is this very intense but super fun for me, at least I hope for everyone in the team. This meeting in which we look at the content we are going to publish the following day, and we try to destroy it. Basically, we ask ourselves a series of questions. For example, is this funny, interesting, or something that is going to make me look committed? What kind of reaction are we expecting from the audience? Are they going to save this post because it's going to be useful for their future weeks, or in general for the future lives? Or is it something we want to publish because we want to gather feedback and comments from the audience and build knowledge about what they need to know about something, and to follow up on that conversation with more content later on, or etc., etc. And then we ask ourselves, is this something people should really care about? Do we care about around this table? And if the content is not strong enough to stand against all these questions and make it to the other part of the check, we decide to just work on it for longer time, or to just leave it. And it's the way we select the very best content that we are able to produce.
What's the percentage of posts that has been killed, on a weekly basis, let's say?
I think it's around 3% of the 3% of the content is trashed. A lot of content is postponed. So I decide this is not. It's not me that I decided it. We decide together that it's not ready to go out because, for example, someone could say, "Okay, that's fine. I just don't get it completely. It's not written in the way we are supposed to write to make it accessible for everyone." So it's really a moment where when everyone can share their thoughts about the kind of work we are doing and make it even better this way. And
after that, then the post that you're just gonna postpone,
yeah.
What's the process? Like the person that actually presented the type of content is working on different format, is like researching more, or just like studying more? How does it work?
It really depends. Sometimes it's not about, actually I would say the vast majority of the posts that we postpone it not because it's not like well researched or there is not enough knowledge in it. It's more about the way we presented it.
The format then?
The format,
okay.
or the copy we use, the wording, the angle. So it's more about going back there with like a different mindset and rethink the way we produced it. Sometimes it's just the author. Sometimes I pair people because I realized during the conversation that there is a person who is not usually the one who writes about that specific topic, but he or she has a point of view, a perspective that is really interesting, and it could be useful to develop a better piece of content. Or sometimes it's me. I mean, I joined the team as one of the most senior people in the team. So sometimes it's just me that who sits next to the author and tries to get it to the other part of the check the following day, probably.
Like a small parenthesis. So, like you work for like legacy traditional publisher.
Yes.
What's the difference between like maybe also like telling the people where you're working, and what's the difference between working for a legacy publisher and working now with Will?
So I think Alessandro said that we are a community, and it's true. As a business, we are. I mean, the company is building a community around itself. I think we are a community even within Will, and that's probably the biggest difference that I can think of, because there is no way in which in a traditional organization you have that chance of sharing your thoughts and shaping the product, like no matter the role you have, no matter the level of experience that you have, or no matter how old are you, which is something that I cannot say for every other place I've worked for.
So the power of user community, but also the power of like employee community,
Yes,
like that.
as well.
Back to the format. So we were discussing about like maybe the content needs to be like readjusted or like just to be like represented under a different format. How do you track which are the format that they're working better, maybe matched with like a specific topic? Do you have a system to do that?
Yes, we do. So we work on a project management tool. There are many, like we use Airtable. There are like, I don't know if people in the room is familiar with this kind of tools, but it's just like a way of following the process of producing the bit of content. And within that tool, we label everything that we do with a series of different label that goes from the format to the kind of topic, the reaction that we expect, etc., etc. And then we process that data to understand if there are connections between, for example, a specific topic and a format, or if you should go with a video instead of a meme or whatever. And we, like every week, we have like a recurrent meeting called the Data Newsroom. We love to name our meetings. And
it's a good thing
the
to name.
Data Newsroom is the moment when our data analyst shares like insights about what we are doing, like with deep dives, specific deep dives on different aspects. So it might be like how we're going with reels on Instagram, or how the way we script videos can impact the performance and stuff like that. Plus, I personally have my whole experience before Will has been in audience roles. So I've worked a lot with data. So I'm kind of
Data man. Data
I'm kind of a data man as well. I'm not a data analyst. I just love to look at, at dashboards and try to understand what they mean and what they can tell me to do my job better.
Have you found any trends about format working better in general? I would say video versus, I don't know, short form video, long form video, post, memes. Like, have you found any trend? I know that it's different, like, from the content you're actually talking about, but which are some trends that you registered?
I think one of the most interesting things that I noticed working at Will is that, for example, the funniest content that we produce is actually very often the content that is more difficult to deliver. So we choose to work on a very relatable level on those topics that are really, really difficult to be understood, and that's something I discovered on the field, because I didn't have that kind of knowledge before from my previous jobs, and I think it's a very powerful tool that we are using to make people understand very complex issues.
I think it's a good segue. I asked Francesco to kind of like maybe go deep on the story of like a post development. So how actually all these organization and all these like processes then makes a post created. And we actually selected few posts, and one of that is like actually surprising to see how Will treated the Russia crisis of like gas. So maybe if you can, if we can go. Yeah. So the story of like development of a post and selecting this post using a meme to actually tell a story of a much complex issue. Do you have Wi-Fi? Yeah, it's there. So I don't know if you see. So, so how this post actually was born, was developed? What's the story behind the post?
Yes, first of all, this post was published in October 2021, so definitely before the war. We definitely wouldn't do this today. But for the non-Italian speakers in the room, the cat is Putin, the tambourine is Europe, and the musician is gas shortage. So we tried to explain in a very easy and accessible way what was going on with the energy crisis in Europe. And the point is that this is not the whole content. So if it's why, there is the explanation of what we just told, what we had just told with a simple video. And this is, I think this is an interesting example, because when the post arrived at the check, we had this, and a cover saying, there is a gas shortage, and Europe is facing a very cold winter. And it was okay. There was nothing technically wrong in that content. It was just boring. Can we say that's boring? Sometimes news is boring, and especially complex issues are very boring if you explain them simply using words and simply using the standard way of news making, which is absolutely effective for a lot of things, sometimes not to deliver a complex issue in a nutshell. So we were discussing this piece of content, and actually in this case it was Alessandro from the back of the room who raised his hand and said, please, could we use the cat? Because it was like a few days that he was sharing with me this meme saying, we need to use this meme one day or another, and this was the perfect occasion. And as you can see, I mean, metrics are not the most important thing. They are not the only focus. But I think that 40K likes on a post that deals with gas shortage in Europe before the winter, so when the problem is not even perceived directly from people, I think it's testament that at least that the message arrived.
Yeah, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, usually, what's the percentage of like engagement and likes you get on average on post? Like,
so we tend to have an average of 6% engagement rate. We don't look just at the engagement rate. We match different metrics. For example, the interaction rate, which is, as you, I'm sure you know, it's a different kind of metric, even if for the vast majority of people it's kind of confusing because they sound really the same. But we look at the number of comments, we look at the reach, we look at saves, a lot of like metrics that from the outside, or views, for example, from the outside, if you're a user, you don't have the idea of how else then likes you can like ponderate if something is working or not. So we try to like go beyond that single metric. For example, one thing that we look a lot at is the out of bubble rate, sorry, which basically means how many people outside your community, your existing community, is seeing this content and potentially is interacting with it, because it means that we are not just talking to the people who already follow us, but we are actually reaching a wider audience on which we can build our editorial strategy.
yes?
Just to say that Francesco's objective for last year was a 3% interaction rate average over the 12 months, and we closed the year with 3.01%. So he's an overachiever in terms of the interaction rate.
Overachiever. And which are the dashboard that you use? I mean, are there like meta dashboard, or like did you build the dashboard by yourself to track those data?
So we cannot only use Meta dashboard because we are on platforms that are not part of the Meta environment. For the platforms within Meta, we use mainly CrowdTangle, which is my secret love and and obsession. We use the Creator Studio Analytics, and then we gather data from those platforms, and we use them on proprietary dashboards that we use to basically do all the cross analysis. For example, as we said before, with the labels that we collect within Airtable. So we have the source of the data, the labels, and then we mesh everything to understand what's working and why.
How many people are doing this job?
Just one person.
One person. Okay, well, one person. Interesting. Can we also have a look at the second post we selected?
Yes, of course.
Again, with the story behind that post.
Disclaimer, we're not obsessed by gas shortage, but it happens to be on gas shortage again.
Della luce. Credo.
Sorry, let me just refresh this. Oh my God.
Della luce. Credo di non essere l'unica ad aver ricevuto la bolletta della luce più alta che abbia mai ricevuto. Quindi capiamo insieme il perché. Motivo numero 1. La Russia, che è il primo esportatore di gas in Europa, sta mandando meno gas per spingere l'UE ad approvare il nuovo gasdotto Nord Stream 2. Questo ha fatto aumentare il prezzo del gas, soprattutto in Italia, ovviamente, dove il gas rappresenta il 42% del consumo totale di energia. Motivo numero 2. Dopo il lockdown la produzione industriale è ripresa a pieno ritmo, facendo salire la richiesta di materie prime come combustibili e gas. Ma la disponibilità era limitata a causa di interruzioni nell'estrazione e nel trasporto, quindi i prezzi sono aumentati. Motivo numero 3. Per raggiungere gli obiettivi di riduzione delle emissioni, l'Unione Europea ha deciso di ridurre la quantità di crediti che le aziende scambiano per compensare le emissioni. Se diminuiscono i crediti, aumentano i prezzi. Tutto questo porterà a un aumento del 131% nella bolletta dell'elettricità e un aumento del 90% su quella del gas. Ma in questo mare di negatività c'è una buona notizia. Il governo infatti ha approvato un decreto per stanziare quasi 6 miliardi per famiglie e imprese, proprio per attutire l'impatto dell'aumento dei prezzi delle bollette sui cittadini. Signore e signori, la mia ultima...
So, this is Luna. And this is actually her last gas bill, so that's a true story. And so you saw the content we published in October, and then winter came, and with winter, the first new gas bill with the rise in the amount that Luna had to pay. So we thought, we have already explained what is going on in terms of energy crisis. We had actually already explained in a different reel what was going on when in newspapers there were headlines about the rise in gas bills that was about to come, and then this happened. It was true. So now it was something that everyone could actually relate to because they were receiving the gas bill. So we thought, okay, a lot of people watched those contents, they interacted with it. We cannot be like happy with that and just say, okay, we have explained that enough, don't you think? No, we go back on the topic and we try to explain it in a different way. So again, in this case, I think the most interesting bit was to do that using the real language of real. Sorry, it was a funny coincidence. And we didn't just went on the platform. We didn't just go on the platform and deliver the news in the same way that you could do on broadcast news on television. We share a part of our life and we share something that is relatable and relevant for other people's lives in the same way that at 26, I think, I'm sorry for Luna if I'm mistaking the age, but 26-year-old woman could do on her Instagram stories, on WhatsApp, on like a cafe while chatting with her friends. And that kind of connection that you can build if you speak with people in the same language that they speak in their real life, I think it's the best way to lower every kind of walls that we've built for ages around news outlets and close the gap between the community we work for and the companies we work in.
I like that very much because you're also kind of like taking the perspective from people and like starting from the perspective to actually explain maybe a topic, which is like a very powerful hook, like that, like people see a value because it's like something that is also happening to them. So you mentioned a very important keyword, especially for us at Meta, like community. So how the community integrates in what you do in terms of like editorial strategy, but also in general, like if you integrate the community into your work.
So, as I said, we work for the community. I think this is not just us, that should be exactly like that for everyone who is doing service. And I think communication, journalism, information in general is service, it's public service. And so for this reason, you should always think of what the community needs and what the community think of the work you're doing. If you don't ask yourself that, you're not doing a good job. And plus, we are on platforms, and in Italian, we say that you cannot stop the sea with your hands. So if you don't care about the community is definitely going to knock on your door and let you know what they think about your work. And if they don't, it means that they already moved forward and they don't care about what you're doing. So again, you're not doing a great job, great work. So for this reason, every single day we spend a lot of time interacting directly with the community, answering their questions publicly and privately, because we receive an incredible amount of direct messages, emails, and feedback from people who just know someone in the team and sends a lot of unrequested feedback, but very welcome feedback. And we use all those comments, all those messages, and all those feedback to understand how can we move forward and improve the way we do our job. And this is not just like a fancy way of saying, yes, we are listening. We actually, we really listen and reply. And we build content based on what they asked us to explain better. We run weekly moments of public interaction with the community. Could be live on Instagram, could be a Q&A with a question box sticker on stories. We, for a very long time, we've done this, I think, very interesting experiment, commenting the comments that we were receiving from the community in a weekly IGTV video posted every Sunday, which was actually done by Luna, again, the same girl you see on the screen. So we really try to make our best to make that part of the work we do, that part of like working for a community, a part of the work we do every day. For example, every day at the check, the meeting I was talking about before, the community managers participate and they tell us, for example, this piece of content that you are discussing is going to be misunderstood because, for example, we have received a lot of questions about what this acronym means, and we should address this problem, changing the way we write this copy.
How many people are doing, how many community managers you have?
Two.
That's like an interesting point because like during some meeting I've been told like it's very difficult to do community management. It is. But you want to say something?
Two for Instagram. I pay free before doing a community manager.
Yeah.
Two for Instagram. But like, so during a lot of meeting, like I've been told community management is very hard. And you guys are doing an amazing job actually answering all the comments with like very good and strategic tone, and it's possible with two people if like they are committed and if they have strategy, if you know what community management means. So like also my suggestion to actually companies or publisher I'm working with is basically like trying to find the right people, also like educate them to be a community manager, to feel passionate about that, to like be sure about the tone of voice, be sure about the value. So really strategically like infusing this type of thing to the community manager, because they can do a great job. Even if they are just two people, they can like review tons and tons of comment in the right way, even if they are just two. So I really like your community management strategy. And also like, I mean, just deep dive a little bit on what Ale was mentioning. So Will Meets, like how did you, so these like offline meetups that you run all over Italy, how did you integrate that into like the strategic, like the editorial strategy, if you did, and how that helped? Because I think it's also something you kind of like bridge a gap. Usually it's not common to hear that much, like maybe publisher meeting the community or creating meetup, especially, I mean, we've been in lockdown for 2 years, so it was not easy, but I think this is also very interesting, kind of like hearing the people, not just through social media, but also offline. So how did you integrate the outcome that you collect from Will Meets into your strategy?
So first of all, every single person in the team at the time, when we ran the Will Meets tour, one way or another engaged directly with the results. So you could be the video maker or the video editor who edited the videos that we published on YouTube. You could be one of the authors that joined the discussion live. Everyone was exposed to this process, and one way or another, that I think that seeds. You tend to ask yourselves one more question instead of one less after receiving feedback directly or through a video from the people you work for. So first of all, that. Plus, we went there with a precise idea of what we wanted to do with those feedback. We built part of our editorial strategy. One of our campaigns, which is going on right now, is built on the experience we had during Will Meets, the one on the one about conscious consumption. Because we understood that there was a huge need from the people within our community to understand how they could have an impact on society, on the environment, on social justice, starting from what they decided to buy when they were at the supermarket, for example, when they buy a specific product instead of another, what kind of idea of the world I'm projecting in that action. And they asked us to help them navigate that decision. So that's why we are running this campaign.
And I know also community has been helpful for you during some, let's call that crisis, but like even though they were not crisis, but like how the community is also a powerful tool to kind of like also build your brand, or like are you relying on the community to like face some of the crises that you've went through?
Well, I don't think that it was something that we directly planned to do, but I think that's what happened. So in different occasions when there was, for example, a particularly difficult discussion in the comments below a post, for example, you can see that there is actually a kind of grassroots moderation within the comments, especially on Instagram. So part of the community feels that they need to chip in and explain to someone who might misunderstood or might be expressing their own opinion in a particularly confrontational way, that you can have that conversation anyway and get your point through, even if you try to tune down the volume of discussion, or maybe you don't know that. Oh yes, you might think that they are saying this, but actually blah, 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 you should look at the other content they've produced. And this is something that happens without us asking for it, but it's probably because the people we work for feel that it's a real community and they are in some way invested in this project as well.
Agree. There was maybe a question, Anna? Yeah, it's like, actually, yeah, the festival told me that it's no Q&A policy, but let's
Yeah, no, but here, no, in this room, we can do it.
We can, perfect.
Because we have this.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so my question was, and Virginia knows because I talked to her earlier today with social media in general, but I want to know, since you guys are so wise on social media, what do you do with troll attacks, if you have any? And if you don't, what do you suggest news orgs do with troll attacks in terms of, I mean, you want to open the comments, you want to build a community, you want to be really democratic and have everybody comment, and then you get attacked by bots, not people. And what do you do with that? I mean, because it's really hard to get help in terms of technology, and it's really hard to deal with them in terms of time-consuming activity. In erasing troll attacks is so crazy. I mean, even Ariana told me that she had to close the comments under her posts on social media, because when thousands and thousands of bots attack you because you did a post on vaccinations, on vaccines, or you did a post on the war, and no-vaxxers or people who don't believe the war exists start attacking you because they're bots from, I don't know, the Russian disinformation system. What do you do? I mean, what's the suggestion?
So
I'm
you have
asking all three of you.
We have like 2 minutes to answer. I'll definitely leave you to answer, and then we close up. So if you can close the answer with 1 minute, and then, because the festival is very strict.
We just address this kind of issues with all the tools we have. So if the comment is from, for example, an actual human being, and they want to engage on the common ground of truth and reality, we do. Otherwise, we just use moderation tools. We definitely block trolls and. Is there a moderation tool for thousands of bots? I mean, there are tools. We don't use any specific tool for moderation instead of like patience. And, yeah.
I would have more questions, but I think we need to close it up. There are also like questions from the room, but probably like they can answer a question outside. So thank you very much, Francesco and Alessandro. And thanks to you for being with us.